Today we're going to do a simple little project. I'm going to make a small desk sign, go through the basics in Easel, and then we're going to cut it out with my 3018 Pro from Eurohome. So the first thing is obviously you got to log into Easel and open up a project, and we're going to start right here. Let's make this over here. The size of my board is 12 by 7. So my first thing I want to do is click on the home so we can just bring this up here. The sign I want to make, well, the desk name sign, nameplate basically, is I want it about 10 inches long by, I guess about 2 inches high is probably good. So the board I'm going to be using to cut out on is, 9 inches. So the board I'm going to use and cut out on is 10 inches wide by 2 inches tall. That is the size. Actually, I think the board is 2.5. I'm sorry, 2.5 inches tall. And I'm going to do that because you're going to see we're actually going to cut out. And if you have a larger board, like I do have another one out there that's actually 4, which would probably be a little bit easier. You would just change this to 4, and the thickness actually is 3/4 of an inch, and then that is the actual size and the thickness of my board. Now I'm used to using inches, so you can always change it from inches to millimeters right here, and then you can actually see the different sizes that you might be more accustomed to, and you're more than welcome to use those, and it's easily just switched back and forth just like that. So the first thing you're going to want to do is click home again, and that brings up our design area. So we're going to want to make a rectangle the size of the actual piece that we want to create. So click on shapes, and then we're going to click square, and then there's your square. So then we're going to go up here to shape, and we're going to make sure it's unlocked, because if it's locked it's going to stay proportional. We don't want that, we want it larger right now, so we're going to unlock it. And the width of it we're going to make, let's just say 9 inches by 2 inches high, and that's going to keep us within our design. If you click away from it, you'll see that it is, let me move this over here, you'll see it's going to be within our design because we've got to put clamps on here to hold this down. So that's our size, and we can take this and go up to edit and go down to center and material for here right now, and then what you want to do is click on it and then go to cut and choose outside the shape path. So I want to do is cut outside that, so I keep my exact 9 by 2 size. But what I do want to do also is I want to curve my corners. I don't want my corners square, so I'm going to go back to shape, and my corner radius I'm going to say, let's just do 1/4 of an inch. I like that. So that's going to have a really nice design to it. So 1/4 of an inch is a pretty good radius. Again, if you change it back to millimeters, it's 6.3 millimeters. To give you an idea, you can just change them however you see fit. So I'm going to go back to inches and go back to cut. Now, one thing to keep in mind is I want to cut this out. As you can see in my detail, and if I click on it, I'm only cutting in 1/4 inch, whatever it is, and I want to actually cut all the way through. I want to cut this out so that when I'm done I have a really nice, pretty plate here. I don't have any of the extra wood on the sides, and I'll sand this, it'll be beautiful. So one thing to know is, let me move this over out of the way again. When you move it all the way down to cut the depth of your board, so I have 0.75, which is 3/4 of an inch. My cut shape is going all the way down 3/4 of an inch. It automatically comes up with use tabs. Now you can uncheck that, but what happens is when you cut through this board, if this is not secured in some way, holding on to here, because your clamps are going to be out here, if this isn't secured on there with like a tab or 2 or 3 or 4, then once you cut through, this thing is going to go flying. There's nothing to hold this in place. So what this does is it puts a little tab here, and maybe a tab here, and here, and here, and the bit will actually lift up and leave a little bit of piece of wood left so that you can just simply cut that out afterwards, but it will hold this in place. So there's a couple things to keep in mind here when you're using tabs. The main one is placement. It's really simple to come in here and just run a blade, some type of knife, even a jigsaw, whatever, to just cut a small piece of wood right here and then sand it. It's another thing to do it on the corner here. So we don't want to do it on the corner. We want to move our mouse over till it has the grab icon, and click your mouse button and hold it and drag it away from that corner. So now I have two tabs, and I like to just space them evenly. There's really no specific placement for it other than unless you have something that you're going to be carving outside that line. Same thing here. I'm going to move this over, and then I'm going to take this one and move it over as well. So now I have 4 tabs that is going to hold this piece in place, and when I'm done, I'm going to simply just cut those little pieces with a small knife and be done with it. You can change how many tabs you have and the length and the height of them. 1/4 inch length is fine. Height of 0.08 is fine. If you were using a bigger piece of wood, then you would want it thicker just to help hold it. But otherwise, that's it. That's our shape. If you look over here, you're going to see this is what we're going to have when we end up with, and it's going to look really nice. So now that we have that, let's move over to here. Let's click the home. Let's click away from that, and now we're going to add in some text. So let's first click this, and then you can pick a font. I'm going to just click Code Pro for now to start with, and it actually put it right in the center for me, and then you double click on your text. Well, now you can just delete and put what you want. Emily O'Neill, and then let's actually move this out of the way for right now. Oh, spell that right. So obviously it's too big, so what we're going to do is we're going to click this corner and we're going to shrink it down, and we're going to move it over a little bit to about the size that I want. I'm going to say a little bit bigger. And if you want to be a specific dimension, you can actually put your parameters in here. Again, you can change it to millimeters if you choose. Back to inches, and I think that's a pretty good size. So what you're going to do is you're going to click this, you're going to click the words, and then you're going to hold the shift key and click the outside. I missed it. Hold the shift key and click the outside. When you do that, the outside border, now you have these options here to center it. This one here will center the name inside the second thing that you selected, and then this will center it up and down. So now I have a dead center of that second selection. So you can click away from it, and basically there is your name. So the next thing we want to do is click on the name, click on cut, and we're going to clear out pocket, and then you need to decide how deep you want to go. One way to do this is to, we're going to come over here to the 3 dots, and we're going to drag this profile back, and then we're going to look at how it's going to look. To me, that's a little bit deep for a name tag, so I'm going to drag this up, and you can just play with this and move it up a little bit, a little down. You can roll your mouse into zoom and see how it's going to look. Remember, you got to sand it really good, so that actually is not bad. 1/8 of an inch is not bad. Maybe a little deeper than I would want. Let's see, where are we at here? I'm sorry, I'm doing the wrong thing here. Depth here. 125 is 1/8 of an inch, so that's actually not bad. So let's just use that as an example. So let's scroll back out. That's what we have, and that's pretty much what's going to look like. And if you want, we can click simulate, kind of get an idea of it cutting, how it's going to cut. It's going to, well, the time we're going to actually change the time. You'll see it's actually going to be cutting. One trick is when you're trying to move this, if you want to see, if you hold the shift key, you can actually drag it without actually rotating it. You can drag it left and right, up and down to actually see. can actually see what it's cutting. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this and zoom back out, and that pretty much is mostly the basics on it. If you want ever to, well, you can play with the different settings of, you know, by cutting inside the path. You'll see if I cut on the inside the path, it actually is going to make it a little smaller in there. Obviously we don't want to clear it out because it's going to have nothing cutting right on it. It's going to cut dead on that line, not inside. And then we're going to cut on the outside of the path. So that's pretty much the basics, how to get started on that. So before we go cutting, we need to change one more thing. The bit that I'm using is 1/8 of a bit. If you had a smaller font, like for example, let's change this font and watch what happens here. If I change the font to, this is, oh, that didn't give me anything. That's really small. Let's try this one. So you're going to notice what's happening is, and hold my shift key, I'm going to drag it over. What's happening is that 1/8 bit is just too big to get in these little areas. See the E, how it got small right up here? So if you actually changed this to 1/16, let's say, you're going to see it's going to get in there a little bit more. If you change it to 1/32, it's going to get even more. And that actually would look pretty good, a 1/32 bit. That would actually be pretty beautiful, to be honest with you. But we could do 1/16, and if we wanted to use this font, but for this example, I'm going to use Code Pro, and we're going to change it to 1/8 so that it will go quicker. I'm going to come away, and so one other thing before we go, I want to explain is the cut settings. So if you notice, the simulate is about 28 minutes. That is because your cut settings are set at a really, really high rate, and the 301A is just not able to do that. So you always want to go back to manual, and you want to lower this down, the feed rate down. 5 or 6 inches a minute is moderate. Actually, oops. If you switch to millimeter, I honestly don't know how that equates, but if you switch this to 5 inches a minute for a feed rate and switch it to millimeter, you're going to get 127 millimeter. So, and the depth per pass is 0.07, which I think the average is about 5 for 5 millimeter for this machine. So back in inches, we've got 5 inches for feed rate, and depth per pass is 1969. I actually just want to change that to 2 inches a minute. And so the feed rate is basically how fast it's going to move. Plunge is how fast it's going to lift up and come back down. It's going to lift up and come over here and come back down. How fast is the bit going to go to the board? The depth per pass is how deep it's going to cut every time it comes past. 0.02 inches is not very much, believe me. It's very, very small. I personally like to go a little bit less. I think I get better of a cut, and the less you go here, the faster you can go here. So because I'm going to go 0.02, I'm going to actually raise this up to 8. So that's going to speed it up. So now when we come down to simulate, you're now talking 2 hours and 21 minutes. If you look at your cut and you change your depth per pass to 3, which you could possibly try, you want to get a little more aggressive with different types of wood. If you have softer wood, if you have poplar, believe me, I would only stick with 2, or sometimes maybe even less, because that's pretty tough wood. But if I change this to 0.03, you'll notice now our time's only down to 1.5 hours. So that makes a difference, because that changes how many passes you're going to have to go through. So for this instance, I'm just going to leave it at 2. I would say do that as your first few cuts to get used to it. Then when you want to get more aggressive, you can get more aggressive. Remember, if you get more aggressive here, you might want to slow the feed rate down a little bit. But definitely change it to manual. Click away. You can click on simulate, kind of give you an idea about 2.5 hours roughly to cut this out. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and get off of here and stay tuned for part 2 video. It's going to be us taking this outside and actually cutting it out on the machine. I'll see you soon.